Welcome to Love Lies Chronicles.
I'd really appreciate your comment. It helps me understand if you enjoyed the story and how I can improve in future ones. The grill was fired up, flames licking at the ribs I'd marinated overnight, while music played low from the patio speaker. Saturday afternoon in Austin. The weather was perfect, friends were over, and everything looked like it should have felt right. But it didn't. I'm Marcus Dalton. I'm 41 years old, a civil engineer with a quiet house in a decent neighborhood, and a wife who used to light up around me. Lately, her smiles felt rented. She was inside, pouring wine for the two women she'd invited. Technically our friends, but in the last few months, they'd felt more like her personal entourage, always ready with a joke about how men don't get it, always giving each other that glance when I said anything halfway serious. My wife, Jasmine, walked outside a few minutes later with that extra sway she knew got attention. Not mine, though. She'd stopped aiming it at me. This time, it landed squarely on Chris, a friend from my gym who I'd invited because he was new to town and didn't know many people yet. Bad call on my part. Jasmine made a beeline for him, laughing at his jokes, lingering way too long on his arm during one of her punchlines, and tossing her hair like she was auditioning for a role no one asked her to play. I stood at the grill, tongs in one hand, drink in the other, watching the performance. When had I stopped being her audience? Chris didn't seem to know what to do with it. He wasn't flirting back, but he wasn't pulling away either. He glanced at me once across the patio, awkward half-smile, like he was checking if I was cool with it. I nodded. I wasn't about to make a scene over something this obvious. Inside the house, the vibe shifted further. Jasmine and her friends moved to the kitchen, pouring another round. I brought in the ribs, set the tray down, and that's when I caught it. One of the women said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "Girl, if I had a body like yours, I'd have options lined up." Jasmine laughed, not awkwardly, like she believed it. She tilted her head, looked at me from across the room, and said, "Please, I could have a side piece in 10 minutes if I wanted one." She said it like a joke. The others giggled, wine glasses clinking. Chris froze. His eyes hit mine again, this time hard. A moment passed. I said, cool as the marble countertop between us, "I can get a lawyer in 5. The silence was instant. Her smirk stalled, glass still in hand. One of her friends choked on her sip. The other tried to mutter something about taking things lightly, but the air in the room had changed. Jasmine opened her mouth, maybe to backpedal, but nothing came out. She just stared at me like I'd spoken a foreign language, one she didn't expect from her husband. I turned, grabbed my plate, and walked back outside like I'd just commented on the weather. I sat down at the patio table, ribs steaming, the sky burning into that late summer orange. No one followed me out for a full 10 minutes. I didn't need to check the clock. I could feel every second of it settle in my chest. My appetite wasn't gone. It was focused. I replayed her sentence in my head. Not the words, but the way she said them. Like daring me to blink first. Like she thought I wouldn't respond. Like she'd forgotten that the man she married wasn't built for bluffing games. It wasn't about the so-called joke. It was the message behind it. The same one that had been creeping into her tone the past few months. That her presence was a privilege I had to keep earning. That I was supposed to be grateful just to be tolerated. That our marriage was something she could toss on the table like a poker chip and then giggle her way out of responsibility. Thing is, I hadn't changed. I still brought her coffee in the mornings. Still paid the mortgage. Still kissed her forehead before work, even when she turned away before I could. But somewhere along the line, she'd started treating that consistency like weakness, like something she could toy with. I heard the back door creak open. Jasmine stepped out, alone this time. Her eyes met mine, but the spark was gone. Not in her. In me. She walked over slowly, sat across from me at the patio table, and didn't say anything right away. Her hands were still wrapped around her wine glass like a shield. "You're serious?" she asked. "Dead," I said. She stared. No tears, just a flicker of realization behind her lashes. Like something slipped out of her control, and she didn't know how to reel it back in. We sat there in the heavy dusk, plates untouched, music still playing softly through the outdoor speakers. The look on her face said everything. She thought she was untouchable. Thought she could humiliate me with a half-joke and a smile, and I'd just take it, like always. But I didn't. And now, the rules had changed. Jasmine slept in the guest room that night. Or at least that's where I assumed she went after the patio silence became too loud for her to sit with. I stayed outside longer than usual. Cleaned the grill. Put away chairs. Tossed the leftovers into containers she used to insist on labeling. Sunday morning arrived with the smell of bacon. Hers. A peace offering, probably. I walked past the kitchen and poured black coffee into the mug she bought me for our 3rd anniversary. Grind, pour, repeat. That was the slogan printed on it. Fitting. She stood at the stove, glancing sideways like someone testing water with a toe. Want a plate? She asked without turning her body. I've already got what I need. I took my mug and walked back upstairs. That line hit her. The silence that followed stretched long enough for the hallway clock to tick 5 times before I heard her turn off the burner. By afternoon, she was pacing, calling friends, cleaning the already spotless kitchen, scrolling her phone like it owed her comfort. I sat in my office going through work reports. The house felt foreign, like a model home staged with familiar furniture, but none of the warmth that used to live inside it. She eventually came to the doorway, arms crossed. So this is how you want to do this? I kept my eyes on the monitor. What do you mean? This distance thing. The cold shoulder. I said one thing, and you're acting like I set the house on fire. I spun slightly in my chair. You didn't just say one thing. You announced your options like I was some poor fool who ought to be scared you'd explore them. She narrowed her eyes. You're overreacting. No, I'm responding. Her expression faltered. She expected guilt, maybe outrage. What she found instead was someone who had already stopped waiting for her to value presence over provocation. That evening she dressed up. Tight jeans, heels, lipstick she hadn't worn in months. I didn't ask where she was going. She hovered in the entryway longer than necessary, keys in hand, waiting for the question I never gave her. Going out with Talia and Jess, she finally said. Have fun. She lingered again, then walked out. I didn't bother wondering who'd actually be there. The days that followed weren't loud. They were surgical. She oscillated between forced cheer and subtle jabs. One morning, she complimented my haircut, something she hadn't noticed in years. That night, she made a comment under her breath about how some men age like accountants. She started sending texts during the day. Nothing romantic. Nothing useful. Just noise. Picked up almond milk. Traffic was brutal. Do we need paper towels? Each message sounded like she was trying to prove something. That things were fine. That she could still play wife without acknowledging the bruise she left on the evening she mocked our bond. I kept my replies short, polite, neutral. She wasn't used to that. Jasmine thrived on emotion. She baited reactions, fed on responses, good or bad. My stillness confused her more than fury ever would. Midweek, she tried to shift tactics. Wore the perfume I used to compliment. Mentioned that the bed felt empty. She lingered in the doorway that night, leaning against the frame like some scene from a rom-com gone stale. You're seriously still holding on to that one comment? She asked, eyes squinting like the villain in a play who just realized the audience turned on them. No, I've just accepted it for what it revealed. She tried laughing. It landed like glass on concrete. God, you're acting like I cheated. I'm acting like I see what kind of person thinks that line is a punchline. The next morning, she made pancakes. Full spread. Fresh fruit. Whipped cream. Like some reboot of Happier Years. I ate cereal and left the house early. She texted later, "You're making this harder than it needs to be." I replied, "No, I'm just making it clearer than you expected." From there, things spiraled on her end. She started slamming doors, snapping at the dog, pacing with the TV on mute while flipping through channels. A woman used to emotional leverage suddenly found herself bankrupt. The most revealing moment came Friday afternoon. I was sitting on the porch with my laptop. She stepped outside, phone in hand, visibly frustrated. "My mom wants to know if we're okay." I told her we're just going through a weird patch. I looked at her for a long second before speaking. You can tell her whatever helps you sleep. But make sure she understands. Patches get sewn up when there's still fabric left. She stood there, blinking into the sun, face unreadable. That weekend, I made a list. Just logistics. Utilities in my name. Storage rental nearby. An attorney I'd researched 2 nights ago. Jasmine walked in while I was reviewing the file on my desk. Her eyes scanned the manila folder and the highlighted tabs. The shift had begun. Her words weren't just a joke. They were a match. And I was building the exit, brick by careful brick, without smoke or noise. Let her feel what life is like when a man stops chasing and starts choosing. Saturday morning arrived with a clarity I hadn't felt in months. No fog guessing, just a decision sitting in my chest like bedrock. I showered, shaved, and dressed for the kind of meeting most men avoid until they've been hollowed out. Not me. I walked into that law office like I was laying the foundation for a structure I knew wouldn't crack. The attorney, Miles Carson, greeted me with a firm handshake and a sharper mind. He asked a few questions, scanned the documents I'd brought, and nodded slowly as he flipped through them. "You've done most of the prep already," he said. "That makes my job easier." "I've had time to think," I replied. We spent 2 hours outlining everything: property division, assets, potential liabilities. Miles had seen cases like mine before. Men who'd tolerated too much for too long, then finally moved with surgical precision. By the time I left, the paperwork had been initiated. Her name wouldn't be on the deed much longer. The shared bank accounts had already been separated last week under the guise of budget reorganization. Streaming services? Passwords changed. Health insurance? Shifted under individual coverage. I got home around noon. Jasmine was scrolling through a travel blog on her tablet, feet up like nothing in the world was wrong. She barely glanced up. "Where were you this morning?" "Setting new terms." She laughed, like she thought it was another one of my quiet threats. "What does that even mean?" I dropped the folder on the counter. "Legal proceedings are underway." The tablet lowered. Her mouth opened. "You said you could get a side piece in 10 minutes, I continued. "I just demonstrated that I can restructure our life in less." She stared like I'd just spoken in a code she didn't understand. "You're ending our marriage over a stupid comment?" Her voice cracked between disbelief and defensive panic. I leaned forward. "I'm ending it because that comment wasn't stupid. It was honest. You just thought I wouldn't take it seriously." She shook her head, trying to reset the moment, like slapping a TV remote that stopped responding. "This is insane. We have years together." "We had years," I said calmly. "Then you started auditioning for single life in front of our friends like I wasn't standing there." She stood up now, voice louder. "I was joking. Everyone jokes. You didn't say anything at the time." Because I was processing the fact that my wife was testing humiliation as a strategy. Her face turned red, then pale, like her body couldn't decide which defense to fire first. She stepped closer. "You're throwing everything away for pride?" "Pride?" I shook my head. "This isn't about ego. It's about standards. You broke ours in public. Now I'm rebuilding mine in private." The next day, I called her parents. They were decent people, always had been. I kept the conversation measured, explained the situation. Her mother's voice cracked halfway through. Her father went silent. I wanted the truth to live somewhere other than between Jasmine's twisted retellings. That evening, she confronted me. "You called my parents?" I told them what you said, and what I've done since. She paced like a lawyer prepping closing arguments. "Why would you do that?" "Because reality checks sound clearer when more people hear them." She looked ready to break a plate, or cry, or storm out. But none of those things happened. She sat down and stared at the floor. "I didn't expect this from you," she whispered. "I know." I stepped outside, let the screen door close behind me. The air was heavy, the sky bruised with evening storm clouds. But for once, I felt clear. By Monday, the divorce proceedings were underway. Her access to shared systems, financial, digital, legal, had been revoked. Every action was clean, documented. Midweek, a friend from our circle messaged me. "Heard something happened between you two." I was there that night. That comment, that was brutal, man. "Appreciate it," I replied. Nothing more. Jasmine tried to play cool for a while. Scheduled salon visits, bought new clothes, posted polished pictures with fake captions. But the shift had happened. People noticed. At a friend's birthday dinner, I showed up alone. Didn't announce it. Just walked in, greeted everyone, and joined the conversation like someone who didn't need to explain himself. 2 guests pulled me aside later, both women. "We saw what she did," one said. "Honestly, the way you've handled this, it's rare." I nodded. "It's necessary." Jasmine didn't attend the next few events. Too many eyes. Too many whispers. The narrative she tried to control had slipped, replaced by the facts she couldn't spin. The strength she once mistook for silence had become a boundary. Unshakable. Unapologetic. This wasn't revenge. It was architecture. And the foundation had been poured. At first, it was casual reach-outs. "Did you remember to forward the insurance forms? Or have you talked to Carson again this week?" disguised as logistical, but underneath, it was bait. I responded with efficiency, answers trimmed to essentials. She tried changing tone next. Sent a photo of the dog curled up with one of my old sweatshirts. "He misses you," she wrote. I read it. Let the screen go dark. The dog deserved peace, too. By Friday, she upped the pressure. "Do we really have to go through with this?" "Yes. We can fix things. You had your chance to honor them. Can we talk?" That time, I didn't answer at all. A few days later, I ran into one of her co-workers at the hardware store. Guy named Luis. Solid handshake, respectful tone. "She's been off lately," he said while grabbing a gallon of paint. "You too." I gave a calm nod. "She'll figure it out eventually," he added, almost like a warning. I looked him straight in the eye. "She already figured it out. I just happened to agree." He blinked, caught the shift, and didn't press further. The unraveling began quietly. She'd post a filtered selfie, captioned with some vague quote about strength or starting fresh, and only get a few likes from the same 3 women. The ones who cheered her on while she tore our foundation apart. Her other circles? Silent. Some of them reached out to me privately. One message stood out. She told us one version. "Seeing how you've handled this, let's just say people notice." By the 3rd week, Jasmine's rhythm cracked. She stopped trying to appear untouchable and started calling again. Left voicemails about bills she thought were due, texts about recipes she claimed to miss. She never once mentioned the thing that started it all. Her mistake? Believing silence equaled softness. That distance meant delay. What she failed to grasp was that men like me don't strike when provoked. We move when the structure's already collapsing. She came by the house unannounced one afternoon. I was in the garage, tightening bolts on a bike I hadn't ridden in a year. She stood in the driveway, arms wrapped around herself like the wind held answers. "You're really going through with this?" I looked up. "You started it." I was joking. No one jokes about side pieces unless they've already fantasized the layout. Her eyes watered, but she held it in. "I never meant it to go this far." I wiped my hands with a rag. "That's what makes it worse. You said something that revealed more than you realized, and you said it with pride." She stepped forward. "I'm scared, Marcus." I was too. That night. Then I realized I feared losing self-respect more than losing someone who weaponized humiliation. She didn't answer. The next few days got stranger. She sent photos from places we'd once enjoyed, coffee shops, parks, the bookstore we wandered on lazy Sundays. Each image arrived without context, like digital nostalgia bombs. I archived them without reaction. People around her began reacting too. Friends she leaned on stopped replying to her long rants. One even messaged me, saying she's been spinning stories, but her slips showing. Her parents invited me over for dinner. I hesitated, then accepted. We spoke like grown adults. Her father asked one question. Was it always broken? No, I said. But something inside her convinced her she'd lose more by being loyal than by gambling on attention. He nodded once. That was the end of it. The next morning, Jasmine messaged again. "I'm spiraling." I said, "You built the spin." Then came the real attempt, the bold one. She showed up in the dress I once called dangerous. Cooked the salmon I loved. Opened the wine we saved for anniversaries. "I miss this," she said, barely audible. "You miss the version of me who didn't make you uncomfortable with consequences." Her fork trembled against the plate. I messed up. I leaned back. That's step 1. Step 2 is living with it. The days stretched longer from there. She stopped trying to lure me. Stopped sending messages, pictures, playlists. But the absence wasn't power, it was defeat. A quiet concession. One afternoon, I received a manila envelope. Inside were handwritten apology pages. 4 of them. She explained everything. Her insecurities, the way her friends validated recklessness, how attention gave her a rush that loyalty couldn't match anymore. I didn't finish reading the last page. She had finally said the truth. The apology didn't soften me, but it clarified something. She wanted to be forgiven. I preferred being finished. 2 weeks after the letter, Jasmine stopped reaching out. The silence came heavy, but not haunting. It felt like standing outside after a storm. Wet earth, bent branches, broken things that finally lay still. I kept moving. The divorce processed cleanly. No counters. Just signatures exchanged through professionals who understood precision. She waived spousal support. I retained the house, the vehicle, and the retirement fund we once promised to build together. Her name no longer existed beside mine on anything legal or financial. Her scent faded from the pillowcases. Her shoes vanished from the closet rack. That quiet unraveling gave me peace in pieces, one drawer at a time. I replaced the furniture. Nothing lavish, just solid, clean lines. The kind that holds weight without flair. The dog adjusted quickly, as if even he could sense that tension had lifted. He stopped pacing at night. So did I. One evening, I sat on the back deck grilling a ribeye. The same cut I'd served during the cookout when everything shifted. The sun dipped below the horizon with that warm orange hue Texas gives to endings. A message buzzed through my phone. It was from Jasmine. Been thinking a lot lately. You were right. No emoji pretending it was lighthearted. She had nothing left to dress it in. I stared at the screen for a moment, set the phone aside, and finished my meal. That message marked the end, not of paperwork, of illusion. She realized too late that words carry weight, especially when used to wound a man who built everything on consistency. She thought humiliation was harmless, that testing boundaries would spark attention, maybe even rekindle attraction through conflict. What she encountered instead was quiet consequence. Months passed. The name Jasmine became something people only mentioned with hesitation, like they were checking to see how far the fallout had reached. It hadn't. I was already building new rhythms. Morning runs, weekend trips to the coast, deep, uninterrupted sleep, conversations that didn't circle emotional landmines. One Saturday, I ran into an old friend at the gym. He asked if I'd heard she moved in with a friend across town. She's laying low, he said, shrugging. She always did that after burning bridges, I replied. He laughed, then nodded. That was it. There were no attempts to reconnect from her after that last message. The silence became mutual, final. My peace came from choosing absence over apology without action. There was no need for a new partner, a rebound, or some desperate assertion of self-worth through another person. I was preserving everything that made me strong before she mistook it for weakness. Every man has a threshold. Mine used to be deeper than hers. Then came the night she bragged about how easily she could trade me out. She underestimated one thing: my capacity to walk with calm, with order, with intention. To end something not from rage, but from respect for myself. She used to call me predictable. Now she calls me silent. That trade cost her more than she thought. I still get occasional glances at events we once attended together. Mutual friends pull me aside. Some tell me they admired how I handled it. Others ask if I ever considered going back. Back? To what? To a woman who used her words like open blades, who made fidelity feel negotiable, who believed attention from strangers meant more than trust from her husband. No, I didn't return to that story. I finished it. The final chapter closed not with vengeance, but with values. She once said she could find a side piece in 10 minutes. That line was meant to rattle me. Instead, it built my exit. And in the end, it gave her something she never expected. Time to think. Alone.
Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments, and do not forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel.